Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system. Hello, welcome back to the Wade Borth podcast. Today, I got a special friend of mine, Tom Suvansri. Welcome, Tom. Thanks for joining me today.
Wade, always a pleasure. Always love chatting with you. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited for our conversation.
You bet. So Tom and I we got introduced. Tom is another advisor that works in the IBC marketplace or space. And just having a good friend on a podcast sometimes just talk about what's going on, what kind of things he's hearing from his clients that maybe relate back to you, the listener, that like, hey, I've heard this before. This is what I felt before too. So I'm so glad to be able to bring your point of view on, Tom, and let's talk about some things that we're sharing in the marketplace that's going on right now, end of 2022, and just see if people can relate to some of the things that we've run across. So again, thank you for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this day and age, obviously, there's if you're looking for uncertainty, it's not that far to find, right? It's right. Everywhere you look, from the economy to inflation to interest rates to war. I mean, it's just crazy. So, obviously I'm hearing quite a lot of people just almost like deer in headlights sort of thing, right? They don't know where to go, what to do. And it's just mind numbing, I think, for some. So then we talk about, things that we talk about, right? Here's something also bend your mind. What if you didn't put money in a bank and you stored it somewhere else, right? So these are all weird things to people that just kind of take them off guard, and it takes some time to digest and kind of comprehend.
Well, part of that is just the conditioned thinking that clients have gone through, right? It's just like anything we learn. If our parents, and again, we didn't have, money was never a conversation in my family just because we didn't have it, right? So when I was growing up, we were farmers. My dad bought land, equipment, all through the bank, and then the bank told him to drop his life insurance because that was expensive. And then 6 months later, he dies. Again, the expensive part was not having it. Then we had to sell the equipment stuff, get out of farming. And so not having money was much more easy to talk about than having money, right? So it was something that's due, then you get out in the world and you're conditioned to think certain ways. And it just, I'm a part of it, Irish, German, and so we don't learn real fast. And so it only took me about 5 years before I could finally figure out, that maybe it was a better way. So,
yeah, no, same here. I mean, it was not talked about. My parents came from Thailand, and they were trying to do the best for their family, just like everyone does, right? And, they never came across the right education or people, and they just struggled quite a bit financially, even though they were making a lot of money. So if you make a lot of money or not, like, it can easily walk away from you quickly if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, that actually, that's so true, is that people that, even if you make a lot of money or don't make a lot of money, you're still subject to the same noise that, I call it noise, that's out there, right? The same dime advice that everybody's offering, right? It kind of goes back to even, I know it's a lightning rod, but there's people that absolutely love Dave Ramsey. I love Dave Ramsey too, because the clients that I have that are with Dave and have read his stuff and sat through the seminars, they're very disciplined people. That's one of the things, I always say that it takes 3 things to make IBC work, right? It's time, it's money, and it's discipline. Discipline's the hardest one to teach. Quite frankly, it's almost impossible to teach. It's either got to be within the client or not. What would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that with a lot of people, Wade. To me, right, it's that discipline is, to me, probably the most important, because one, it's a sign of people want to continue to learn, right, and grow in this, because, and we talked about a little bit offline before we started, is like IBC sometimes takes some time to really kind of solidify for people. And it was for me too. And we can talk about that a little bit, but yeah, the discipline to stay on it, to learn, to be open, to do the basics around saving and, paying yourself back, and all those sorts of paying back the policy, all those things require discipline. And, that was the problem with buy term, invest the difference. People bought term and spent the difference, right? Type of stuff. So we need to be disciplined. So, it's all about that. And I've had to stop people from doing IBC because I say you're not in a position to be there. Right. And it's not going to work. And I don't want that for you. So it does take that for sure.
Yeah. And that, you know, if you think about it, and just think about the advice we get, and advice we get through the internet or through, you know, and I don't want to pick on Dave because, again, I know that people that absolutely love him and he's done wonders for them because he's teaching them better habits. Quite frankly, that's the start. But if you think about it from a standpoint of advice, right? So question I ask, and I've done a podcast on this before, I've written blogs on this before, is, when we're talking to our clients, when we're talking to people, I always ask the question, is your income common or uncommon? Right? So think about that for a second, and everybody, it's funny. I was talking to a business owner. He was making good money. And I said, hey, is your income common or uncommon? He's just a normal everyday guy that works hard and he does really well. So his thought process was like, oh, my income's common. I mean, it's nothing special. But when we look at it from the masses, his income is definitely not common, but he was taking common advice. So think about this. I'm going to walk through an exercise with you real quick, Tom.
Yeah.
And those that have listened to my podcast probably know this, but it can be real helpful to the refresher too. So, if we think about what it takes to be in the top 25% of the household income earners in this country, what do you think that number would be?
Top 25% income earners. Yeah, I would say, well, let's just say $80,000.
Well, a couple of years ago when I ran the numbers, it was 80,921.
Wow.
Yes. You are an engineer, aren't you?
Yeah, it's like a prank to the thing going on here with Bob Barker. This is awesome.
Yeah. So, like I said, you're an engineer by trade, correct?
Actually, my background is actually biology and chemistry, like science.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So science. So it's not even mathematics. But anyhow, you're right on. So you think about it. So 25% of the population have an income that's higher than 80%. What do you think it takes to be in the top 5% of the population as far as attendance?
Top 5. I got to believe that's, say, 250,000.
It's actually just shy of 200,000.
Okay.
So,
wow.
What do you think it takes to be in the top 1%? Top 1% of the population that's up.
Oh, that one's got to be closer to, say, $500,000.
Yeah, $480,000. So, and again, this isn't picking on Dave Ramsey. It's just like, where are we getting our advice from? Susie Orman's, the CNBC, wherever, all these financial entertainers are out there. And how does Dave Ramsey make his money? Right? He makes it by selling books and doing seminars, right?
Yeah. Running a business.
Yeah, that's his business. That's where he makes his big money. And so when he's crafting his message, does he craft it for the masses? Because that's where the money's at. Or does he craft it for the people that are in maybe the top 10%? Well, heck, let's even say the top 5% of the population.
Definitely the masses.
You think about it. He's going to do it for people making $80,000 or less. That covers 75% of the population. And he's giving him advice for somebody that's, making $60,000, $70,000 in income with, $100,000 to $200,000 in debt. And the advice he's giving them is great for those people.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me, Wade, of like when I first started learning about finance too, is, things like the millionaire next door.
Right.
Let me keep my way to wealth, right? Script it and save and, back to Dave Ramsey, maybe eating rice and beans, right? That's what I got to do. And I'm not opposed to you got to work hard. Like, this. You're a hard worker, work hard, but I don't have to be cheap and sacrifice my life, and some basic needs and wants to get it. There are better ways, I think, but that's what we all hear, right? To be, and to your point, for the masses, that's maybe a good starting point, right? But, to your point, you need to maybe expand and advance your exposure to things around finances to get to that 5 or 10 or 1% if you aspire to get there. Right.
Well, and to that point, I think that's a scarcity mindset. That's the part I really have a problem with, is that it's very much a scarcity mindset versus a prosperity mindset, right? It's like, man, I'm going to be scared enough that I'm all going to do is eat beans and rice. Well, that's an awful way to live, right?
Yeah, but maybe for one meal, I do that. I'm not a big foodie, but, You
can see the video here, and if we're on video, that's great, but you can see that I don't eat a lot of beans and rice. I eat a lot of everything. So, But the point is that, if we want to have wealth, we have to get from being a consumer mindset, because that's kind of what this is, right? We're not going to spend any money, and it's all about the consumption and not about the production, right? You think about, we have to change our minds. I really believe where we need to go in this country if you want to have wealth is change your mindset. Your mindset should be, how can I do it? And this goes back to Robert Kiyosaki, right? There's been 1,000 books written on this mindset idea. Change your mindset from a scarcity consumer mindset to a prosperous business mindset, right? I'm going to go out and do something that's going to generate more income than I can ever spend. I mean, ultimately, that's where you want to get your mindset.
Yeah.
And so part of what we teach, and obviously what we teach in the infinite banking concept, is let's start a business. Let's understand what the banking function is in this world. And this is the difference between Dave Ramsey and Nelson Nash. Was Nelson said, you finance everything you do. And Dave says, never be in debt. Well, when you spend money to get yourself out of debt, you've given up use of that money forever. And so therefore, that's a financing cost, but we just don't see it. It's harder to see. But you look at people that have wealth. I mean, if you think about it, we should study people that have wealth versus people that don't.
Well, I agree with you. And it's whether people believe that, hey, that's fantasy land for me, right? Those types of people, the things that they do, like think about even just life insurance. Oh, that's just for the wealthy. They have all this extra money, so, they can blow it on life insurance. But for the normal smart person, don't do it. It's stupid, right? That's the kind of message people get. And I said, to your point, thinking abundantly, I always subscribe to the success leaves clues, right? People who are successful, they're doing something unique, set themselves apart, whether it be the value that they bring or the genius to bring to their craft. But, they're unique and they're not following the herd, right? And that is what makes them unique and special, right. And get to the 1%, right? It isn't following the typical life.
Right. Even if you're just in the top 10%, you don't have to have something super special to be in the top 10% of those income earners in this country. I mean, think about it. $140,000 to be in the top 10% of the income earners in this country. Right. And again, that number might be a little low. It's from a couple of years ago, but let's say it's at 150, whatever it is. It's not like it's super high. Again, if you're making $20,000 a year, it seems like it's not forever. But the thing about it is, you have a choice to stay there, or you have a choice to find a way to not be there, right? If you don't want to, go observe those that aren't in that situation that you're in. Hang with people that are making much higher income. Go take people to lunch that are making millions to find out what their habits, what their thought process. Don't try to replicate their business. Try to replicate their thought.
Yep. Yeah, no.
And discipline in their habits.
Well, and we talked about it before, like this is where, like I said, The Millionaire Next Door, and certainly I came across Dave Ramsey in my lifetime too, and certain things resonate with me, like, save some of your money, right? I think we all believe that makes sense, right? We should be saving it, whether it's the richest man about wherever you hear these same things. Yeah, it's good. Where you save it does matter, as we know. Where you store it does matter, and how you use it. And so I remember the time I first came across becoming your own banker, and, I remember reading this book, and I came across it actually through the prosperity economics movement, and you learn a little bit about that. And I had a whole life, and I read this book, and I didn't know what I just read, right? I just didn't get it. I'd never seen anything like this or read anything like this, never came across this way before, and knew no one who did this. And I was like, how does this kind of miss my world, right? Because you see all these other things, and I just had to keep on reading it over and over again. I couldn't understand what I was reading.
But you think about it, how many millions of dollars, how many channels are on TV dedicated to conditioning your thought process, right? How many financial channels are, I don't know if you have cable or not, but
I don't.
How many financial channels, right? I could think of 4 or 5 off the top of my head without giving it much thought at all. With CNBC and Bloomberg and Fox Business, and all these channels are out there, conditioning you to think that the only place you can grow wealth is where, and somebody else is green. Money in the stock market. If you read all, Robert Kiyosaki, you read Rich Man of Babylon, all these other books have a different approach. They say, take control of the banking function in your life. That's the first step. So it's where you save and how much you save has got to be the first step. Well, that's not a whole lot different than what Dave said. It's just that, then he goes into this scarcity thing, like, never, he doesn't understand that when you stake your money and give it to somebody else because you paid cash for something, that's not much better than the person that financed. Right? Think about it. The real wealth creators are going to take control of that banking function. And they might not, it's like any other business. The first maybe 5-10 years, they might even be behind where the guy that's paying cash. But the long-term implication of the total banking function and doing what Nelson teaches us in becoming your own banker far outpaces anything else, because that's the true wealth creators, right? That's how, again, I'll go back to the Rockefellers. Look at them. Now, when I deal with people, we just have to take a bunch of zeros off because they're not the Rockefellers. But it's the same concept, same habits. So we just take the zeros off and say, well, if we're going to finance stuff, we're going to have our own banking function. We're going to have our own family financing system, and we're going to apply that. And then what we're going to learn is how to run a financing system properly. That's the first step. And then what we find out is that there's going to be a lot more people out there that are going to want to be part of our system. So now we can truly start making money. Now we're going to bring outside dollars in because I'm going to finance something that you need. If it's a business, if it's an opportunity or whatever it is, you're going to need money. I have it. I'm going to charge you interest more than what I pay. And now I'm making money. I'm bringing your money back into my system.
Yep.
And I'm keeping my money in my system. And that's the part that people miss. They think of this asset is really a very low value asset. Meaning people don't understand that cash is a high value asset, but they treat it like a low value.
Yeah, no, especially these days, with flight to safety and people want to, they appreciate cash, right? And they're dealing with the fact that, inflation's eating it alive. But cash is, I heard this the other day, it stuck with me. It's like a call option, right? I can start when things change and I got opportunities. People with cash are going to be able to take advantage of them. It's a call option that they can use when other people have got their money stuck in places they can't touch, right? Yep. And to me, it's a really powerful position to be in, and it definitely, to me, this day and age really makes me feel more comfortable to have it there, right? Because I know we're going to be ready when the time comes, right? We'll be able to see some opportunities.
Well, and think about this. I've had this conversation with a lot of my business owners too. I said, who's in charge of your business if you have to go to the bank and they're going to give you a thumbs up or thumbs down if you can move forward with the project? Who's truly in charge? I had a CPA tell me one time, he says, those that control the financing are in control and we always win. Think about that for a second. If you have to go to the bank and they're going to give you the thumbs up or thumbs down to whether if you can move forward. And we saw this in 2008, right? I saw it a bunch in 2008. Guys, companies that had access to cash and were able to control the banking function of their life, they understood it, bought out their competition because their competition had to go to the bank and say, hey, I don't want to expand or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and they're going to scrutinize it to death and set the terms and...
Well, exactly. So you're beholden to somebody else. And remember, so this is a good example. When I was first introduced to IBC, it was in 2006. And I get it. I finally get it. It took me about a year. So it's probably the end of 2007. Started to fund my policies, started to really get IBC. And we were doing an addition on our house. And this was in mid 2008. Can't remember exactly. It must have been late spring in North Dakota because the contractor came over and he said, hey, we'll be over here next week to start putting footings in. So the ground must have been thawed. It wasn't frozen. So I said, okay, that sounds good. Be over next Wednesday. I got a letter on Monday of that next week, right before they were supposed to start working, that says, oh, by the way, your line of credit have been suspended. And that's how we're going to fund this. And so I had to call my contractor and said, hey, my line of credit's been suspended. Not because of anything I did, right? Our economy was good. I was making good money, great credit scores. Nothing that I did affected it. It was just that the financial world was in chaos. And so they pulled back and they cut everybody's line of credit. Wells Fargo. This was Wells Fargo, right? And he says, that's funny. He says, you're the third call I've had today. And from that point, I thought I understood IBC because I thought it was about rates of return. I thought it was about interest. I thought it was about all that stuff. At that time, it was like this big sledgehammer hit you over the top of the head. He said, you big dummy, it's Boston. And from that point forward, was when I truly understood what it was like to not be in control of your finance or of the banking function of your life. I said, never again do I want to be in that.
It's a really great story, and you can share with people until they experience it. Some don't really believe it could happen, right? And I've come across people, that I shared stories like that for people, and they just can't fathom it, right? And until they experience it, but there was people who have experienced it, and they know who's in it, right? Until you can experience. So it's tricky. I get it.
I had a mentor of mine a long time ago. He says, it's hard to explain to somebody what it's like to be chased by a bear. Until you've been chased by a bear, right? So until people experience it, but think about, was it 3 years ago, 3 years ago? Wells Fargo went to pull all these people's lines of credit. There's this huge uproar. It's going to happen. It's going to happen more as things become a little less uncertain. And again, at the end of the day, who do you want to be in control? And it's not about anything else in your life besides control of who's making the decisions in the banking function of your life. And once we can kind of get past the numbers, once we can set that aside and we understand that it's about that more than anything else, you really don't get IBC until you understand that part.
And you have to believe it too. And I think most people, have that desire, right? They want to have control of their lives in general, right? They want to know where it's going. It's going to a place where they want it to go. And obviously you and I know, I can't control everything, right? There's things that are going to happen, but this is where we do what we can to control what we can control, right? We put that in place, and we're looking for that control freedom. I think everyone wants that. It's just a matter of whether you believe it's obtainable, right? And what are you going to do to secure it? And, I think there are some people put their hands up and say, you know what? Yeah, the financial system's got me by the bootstraps here, and they get to control it. Well, what you're talking about is how to take some of that back, right? From this function.
And that's a great point, is that people don't know. They throw their hands up because they don't know that there's a roadmap out there. And there truly is. If you go read Nelson's books, Nelson Nash, for those that don't know, wrote a book, Becoming Your Own Banker, the Infinite Banking Counts. And that's truly a roadmap of how you get it done, right? Take control of Parkinson's law, have your money stored in a safe, secure, guaranteed place. And then when you do put it to work, think about it as business, where you have to pay back principal and interest, because that's what's going to make your business work. You got to have all these things in place, but there's a roadmap out there that people weren't aware of. And that's the first time I picked up that roadmap. I'm like, there's something there. And it took me the better part of a year and a half to really appreciate what was being written in that book. And I didn't have anybody to talk to until I called, picked up the phone. I called the number, and I'm like, I didn't know who I was going to talk to. And guess who picked up the phone? It was Nelson Nash. And then, we had a 2-hour conversation, and he invited me invited myself down to Birmingham to buy supper that really picked their brain. So that was my entry into the IBC world, because I didn't realize there was a roadmap. And then once I did realize there was a roadmap, I didn't appreciate it until again, like I said, it was hit with a hammer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tricky. Listen, I'll tell you, before we started, a local friend of mine, he's a CPA, friend of mine, and sharing him some of these concepts. And, him and his father ran a successful CPA business, and now he's taking it over with his brother, and really good guys. And they've never heard any of these things, right, in their lifetime. It just kind of has been sitting in some, invisible land like this. I call it like whatever the blind spot that people have in their financial lives. And a lot of these things are sitting there. It's just, you got to look over the shoulder a little bit. They're there, right? And you got to, recognize it, but, you get used to it. So it's amazing. Like, these professionals in the financial world, and how it is, Wade, like, people respect CPAs. They think they're almost like financial advisors. Well, even they are sometimes, can get caught and miss some of these things that are just, not out there, because they're also in their own worlds and expertise, and they miss some of these things.
Yeah, as much as I love my CPAs that are out there, I have to say that most of them aren't innovators. Most of them are record keepers, right? Historians, for lack of a better word. And not all of them. I mean, there's some very forward-thinking CPAs. And yes, I find one, man, I love them to death, because they're able to think outside the box. They get this. But most of them don't, because they're like the rest of the population. They just, here's what the CPA world teaches me. Here's what they feed me. And I don't think outside the box, right? I'm too busy trying to make my business run, or whatever it might be, that I just don't think about it. But when they start asking their clients if they do it, right? If they start asking if they're wealthy amongst their clientele, I wonder what they would say.
I think they would find that more and more of them are exposed to it and recognize the value of it.
Yeah.
And that's probably why they got wealthy to begin with. Right. They're open-minded. They're going to take their lives under their control and move it forward, as opposed to just listening to kind of, the mainstream information. Right. They got there so I think it all goes hand in hand together in my mind.
Yeah. And it's because it's true. Again, I kind of say it jokingly, but I'm serious about it in the sense that I've asked my CPA, and you've probably done the same, because I get hey, how come not everybody else is doing this, right? I'm like, there's probably more people than we think are doing this. It's just nobody talks to us. It works well for them, so they're out doing it, and they're not putting it up in the dope, right? We don't have the 14 financial channels to talk about something that's so simple as,
Right.
But and again, I've asked, CPAs hey, do you have clients that are doing this? And it's amazing how many that do, right? You probably know CPAs that say the same thing, right?
Absolutely. They've reached out to people and, they're like, do you know about this? And a lot of them say, yeah, my advisor shared it with me. I learned it. And so it's more out there, but to your point, it's not something that people would naturally be asking about, because they're saying, where are you investing your money? That's usually it. Where are you investing? Right? That's a question. Not only you get this Wade, from people where should I invest? Well, that's obviously a different animal.
Yeah.
Question answers, where are you saving your money today?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's exactly. What you're saving, because we're not investing. That's the exact opposite of what we're doing, right? We're saving money. We're putting it aside. We're like Wells Fargo, right? We're going to take, put our money in our tier 1 capital, and they got $20 billion and what they even call bank-owned life insurance solely. We actually have an acronym for it. That's how big and prevalent it is. Bank of America's got $24 billion in BOLD, right? So what's in BOLD? All that properly structured life insurance. Tom, what do you sell to your clients that want IBC? Properly structured life insurance, right?
Interesting. So banks like it, corporations like it, right?
They have their own acronym. It's called COLIs, corporate owned. Right. So you think about it, they have their own acronym for these products that we're taught as consumers. Again, get out of the consumer mindset, but we're taught as consumers to think, whole life is bad because Dave Ramsey tells me that. Well, okay, if it's so awful, the people that run Wells Fargo and Walmart and Bank of America must be the dumbest son of a guns in the world, huh?
Yeah, right. They don't have anyone that's smart enough to recognize the scam that's going on here, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's just bad guys. But they're just so stupid. Well, they just have so much money, they just throw it around. You think they're that stupid, right? They're looking at it very closely. All right. That's what wealthy. Big 2 points. How they got wealthy is because they're, looking at their wealth and being open-minded to learning new things and uncovering it, right? Because, that's really the heart of it. I think for, Wade, most people that I come across that are open to learning it, then see the value in it and they see where it fits. But, it's where it takes an open mind and willingness to learn it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes back to when people say, well, if IBC is so great, so fabulous, why haven't I heard about it? And I kind of go back to the statistics of the little game that we played earlier, right? 5% of the population makes over $200,000. So those people probably have a little bit more income, and so they're doing things a little bit differently. And so now people that are doing IBC, you don't need to make $200,000. To do IBC, you can do it at me level. But again, it's just the smaller part of the population that those that are really starting to generate wealth are now starting to have their minds open a little bit to how to make this thing work. And so when people say, is it for everybody? I say it's absolutely for everybody. But not everybody's ready for this concept. Part of it is they have to get their financial house in order, and B, they have to have the discipline, and C, they have to be open-minded enough to say, well, I guess I'm willing to learn something that is not being blasted to me over the community. Right.
Absolutely.
Then I'm going to study those that are successful and say, well, what are they doing? What are their habits and what are their strategies that they're doing that not everybody else is doing? Why do you want to study somebody that's, again, making $60,000 and got, $200,000 in debt? That's not something you want to study. Study those that are successful.
I couldn't echo that any stronger than I am. I just think it's the key, right? And it's back to mindset. Right. I would say with what the masses do, or am I willing to stick my head out there and learn what the minority is doing and understanding how they're being successful? So,
Yep,
absolutely.
exactly. Well, Tom, I appreciate the conversation today. Hopefully people will take this to heart, that it's all about mindset. It's about thinking differently than the herd, as it were, and saying, well, how can I get out there? How can I be in the top 5%, top 1% of the population? It's not that far to reach. All we have to do is articulate a little bit different and not listening to all the noise that's out there. I mean, we're going to listen to the noise, but it's like, find better noise, right? So find better advice, find better counsel if you want to be in a position that's not where everybody else is at, if you want to be in a better position. So, because that's the conditioned thinking that's out there is going to keep you where you're at.
And on that note, and I'll do a shameless plug here, and you can erase this if you'd like. So I did, as I was mentioning to you before, I did write a book that wasn't starting off as a book. It was more just, my life lessons, things that have helped me along the way to get my mindset right and get some joy and happiness and wealth in more than just my bank accounts, right? And financial accounts. And it's called Wealth Beyond the Numbers, and you can get that on my website. It's just something that I was planning on trying to leave for my kids, for them to, as they ignore everything I tell them until they get older. Now they have a book that summarizes at least some of the big things that have helped me. And the people have helped me, which I think is huge, that have loosely mentored me or directly mentored me in terms of helping me become better. And so it's something that anyone could pick up if they'd like.
What's the name of the book again, Tom?
It's called Wealth Beyond the Numbers.
Nice. I like it. Wealth Beyond the Numbers. And what's your website?
Yeah, it's perennialpride.com. One word, perennialpride.com.
Perennialpride.com. Well, perfect. Well, Tom, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. Love having our conversations. And it's been a while since we've spoken. And so I'm glad we got a chance to get back together, have this conversation, and we'll continue to do it again.
Absolutely. Anytime.
All right. Thanks, man.
Take care.
If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches, and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, as we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.